Facebook. He's oh, there, perfect. Recording in progress. Okay, got it. So yeah, so not to worry. And Jesse Kennedy, hello. And Michelle.
Hi,
Michelle, are you at the lake already?
I am.
I have not been there yet this year.
Oh,
well,
I'm
I was
so
here.
sorry.
I was up after the storm, but
Yes.
I haven't been up to stay, which is, it's just been crazy. So
Oh, well, it is a
Yeah.
beautiful Stony Lake day today, I have to say.
good. Hello, Mike.
Hi, Carol.
Mike.
Good morning. Hey, Bob and everyone else.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So and Jessica, Jesse, you're on Sturgeon as well, correct?
I live in Lindsay actually, but I have
Oh,
family
okay.
with a cottage on Sturgeon, so that's the
Okay.
lake I have access
Yeah.
to.
Perfect. Yep, that's great. So Alan, right beside you on my screen, is also there. Hello.
Hmm.
Hamilton. And Jill is from Scugog Lake, and we met last year, and she made a very delicious lunch.
Whereabouts on Scugog, Jill?
I'm on Washburn Island.
Washburn Island. Man, I've
Yeah.
frequented there many times. I grew up just outside of Valencia. I was on O'Reilly Lane. So yeah, it's my old stomping grounds.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And I think Nancy's just joined us, who's also on
Hi.
Scugog.
Yeah, we're on Scugog. We're at
Nancy?
Caesarea. We're at Caesarea.
Yeah.
Okay. There you go. We'll just give people a couple more minutes. I'm going to try to start on time because I know some people were concerned about getting out of here on time. So, and I don't want to talk to you too long because it's really nice, and who wants to be sitting watching Zoom? So,
It's too hot to be outside here.
I was gonna say,
yeah, here too.
Got to be
I
in
have
the
a-
lake.
Yeah, that's right. Have you been in the lake today, Mike?
Not today, but I was in yesterday. It was lovely.
Good.
Mhm.
Well, I'm finally getting up there next weekend, and then I'm going to stay, I hope.
Mhm.
So,
Well, it's great after a day's working in the garden. You jump in the lake. It makes all the difference.
and Mike
Today
has
is-
absolutely incredible gardens.
Well, it's 32 degrees here today, so
Oh, that's a lot.
I'm not out in the sun doing too much.
Oh man, that's Kathy. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna give people like one more minute, and then we'll start.
Diana.
Yeah. All right, I don't see Patty yet, but she'll be here. That's 10. So we have, well, I'll do that in a minute. Yeah. So I've never actually, I don't usually present at Zoom meetings. So please excuse my technical difficulties I'm likely to have. Brooke helped me the other day trying to share my screen, and yeah, let's just say it was kind of embarrassing. So, but yeah. Okay. Well, it is 1:31. So I think I'll start because the really important stuff is coming mostly at the end, and we are recording.
Just give me one
so-
minute, Carol, and I'll
Oh, sure.
get things organized.
That is the voice of Robert Bailey, who's actually knows how to do this. So he's helping. And if the rest of you wanted to, turn off your video so you don't have to stare at yourselves, that's fine too. And mute yourselves. So I'm just hoping my dog doesn't start whining and barking during this. But,
Okay.
okay,
Let me get my
Okay.
act together here.
sure.
Okay, Oscar.
Oh, there's Diane.
Hi.
Hi, Diane. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Sorry, that's me. Sorry, that's me.
Okay.
Sorry, that's me.
Okay. All right. Robert Bailey is now host.
And I think, did you already get the message you're recording, Carol?
I did, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So to share my screen, I just press share screen, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Oh, I don't want to do that. I just move over here.
Is it letting you do that?
I'm not sure. I think so. Share.
There it
There.
is. Yeah.
There. Okay. Now how do I move this out of the way so I can? There we go. We'll do it that way. I really don't know what I'm doing, folks. So okay. Oh, I'm too far down. All right, there. I'm on my welcome page. So, oh, now I have people covering up part of my screen. So how do I change that? I guess minimize you guys. Oh, there we go. Okay, can everybody still hear me and see the screen?
Yep.
Okay. So, all right. So basically, I wanted to welcome everybody. That's my wonderful picture of Starry Stonewort that I took last summer on Stony Lake. And we'll go from here. So just want to welcome everybody and thanks very much for taking time today and for the rest of the summer to help me out. I really appreciate it. And also thanks to Bob and Brooke for helping me out today, which is great. And as you've already heard, this is being recorded and I will post it on our KLSA YouTube channel. And I'll send you out links to that after if you do have to leave for some reason or for the people who weren't here today, that's fine. Okay, so what I'm going to do is start by just sort of talking a little bit about how things went last summer, because this is our second year trying this. And after we do that, I'll give a little quick brief explanation of things that didn't go so well and things that I thought did go so well. And from there, we'll just do a quick review. And then Brooke is going to talk to us about using iNaturalist, which is a different reporting tool this summer. And then after that, I'm just going to go over the identification sheet again that Tyler Harrell and the good folks at Ontario Tech University made for us last year, and just do a little quick reminder of photos that we need. Okay, so.
And don't forget.
Oh, don't forget.
Right.
What am I not forgetting?
No, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. If I forgot something, please tell me. All right. Oh, geez. How am I ending up at the end? I can't see the, oh, darn. Oh, man. I knew this was going to happen. I'm also new to Macs, so it's like a whole pile of new stuff going on. Yeah, hold on. Okay, there. That's where I wanted to be. There. Okay. So basically, so how did we do last year? Okay, so last year, KLSA had about 20 volunteers on 11 different lakes. And our volunteers identified Starry Stonewort on Stony Lake, Chemong, Big Bald, and Big Bald Lake. Big Bald Lake was the most significant volunteer find last summer for KLSA because it had not been identified on Big Bald Lake before. So that was a big thing. And then Kawartha Conservation volunteers, we were working with Kawartha Conservation, sharing some resources and help and things. And they had 55 volunteers on 4 lakes. And of those volunteers, the only Starry Stonewort found last year was on Sturgeon Lake and Scugog Lake. On Scugog Lake, Starry Stonewort obviously is really well documented, and the folks at Ontario Tech University have been studying that for a long time. And so that wasn't very surprising, but the find on Sturgeon Lake, which I only saw through EdMaps, is new to me. I hadn't known that there was Starry Stonewort on Sturgeon, and since it was verified by the folks at Ontario Tech, I'm assuming that they were fairly sure that that's what it was. So that's new, and that was Jesse Kennedy, who's here today, and on Big Bald Lake, it was our volunteer Doug Dewar. Backwards. Anyways, okay, so lessons learned last year. So the first thing we learned was that EdMaps wasn't maybe as useful, user-friendly and project-friendly as I had hoped. Anybody that knows me knows I was really excited about getting Starry Stonewort into EdMaps because when we first started looking at Starry Stonewort, it wasn't there at all. So I wanted it to be in EdMaps so that we could have sort of an official record of where Starry Stonewort was. And what happened was volunteers found the app a little hard to navigate. People found it really hard to upload photos. We had some trouble with things like entering negative surveys. They wouldn't upload. So there's a lot of little technical glitches. The people who are doing the verifying for us also had trouble on their end, which is a lot more complicated probably. Yeah, and we had some people who couldn't figure out why some of their entries were flagged as private, not public, and it was just some small things. And probably if we, knew how to use it better, it would have been easier. But that's the best we could do. So as a project leader, though, that was the part that I found really frustrating. I could not see what anyone was doing. I could only see reports once they were verified and posted, and there was quite a long delay between people submitting their observations and having it actually come up. So I was sort of working blind for most of the summer, which was kind of awkward for me. And it was also hard I couldn't, look and see if people sort of were on the right track for identification and things like that. So that ended up being a little frustrating. So, okay. And then the second thing was people doing the verifying for EdMaps. They were doing this for all of Ontario, not just our groups. So they saw, a wide variety of things. And the big thing that they pointed out was not just our group, but all across Ontario, was that people were submitting observations, but not submitting photos. Well, that would be very hard for them to verify. So if there's no photo and you're saying, hey, I found Starry Stonewort, that's kind of pointless. So that was their main reason for rejecting a lot of submissions last year. So we're going to definitely have to make sure we don't do that again. And right after no photos, I guess the next problem they had was really bad photos. And having taken photos of Starry Stonewort now for a number of years in different locations, I can see how my photos have slowly gotten a little bit better. In the beginning, like everyone else, is like, it's a rake full of stuff, and okay. But we'll talk more about photos later on, but that was part of the problem. Photos that were too low of resolution, didn't show any sort of distinguishing characteristics of the Starry Stonewort that we're looking for, that sort of thing. So that was the problem. And then, of course, the last and greatest difficulty pointed out by the verifying folks was difficulties identifying Starry Stonewort. Now, Starry Stonewort is notoriously difficult to identify because it is very similar to some of our native charophytes. So, I mean, it looks, muskgrass, Nutella, Talipella, all of these things look very much like Starry Stonewort. So sometimes it's hard to know if you're actually looking at Starry Stonewort or one of those other plants or microalgae, whatever. And so that was a real problem. So what they found, out of 39 positive reports that they received from Ontario, not just our groups, only 17 of those were actually Starry Stonewort when the verifiers actually looked at them. Now, if I'm a university researcher and I'm looking at 46% of accuracy of people reporting Starry Stonewort, I may not think that was very good. But as a community science person and a person who didn't see any recorded Starry Stonewort a few years ago when I first started getting interested in this, the fact that we had 17 more locations of Starry Stonewort identified, to me, seemed pretty good. I was actually quite happy about that. Yes, we did have a lot of misidentifications and things, but I'm not really that worried about it. So the fact that people are out there looking, to me, and trying to learn what it is that we're seeing and being interested in yet another invasive species, to me, that's the win here, not really the number. So 17 extra locations of Starry Stonewort, I thought that was absolutely wonderful. That said, do we need to improve our identification skills? Yes, we do. And we're going to work on that. Oh, God. Here. Okay. So what are we going to do this year? Well, basically, we're going to do a project very similar to last year. And if you think way back to a whole summer ago, we're going to sample, sort, identify, and report, right? Which was exactly the same thing we did last year. So for sampling, you're going to take your lovely two-sided rake, which looks pretty awesome and scary sometimes when you drop it against your shin. You're going to take that rake. This is Patty McDonald on Stony Lake, who's been doing this for a couple of years now. You're going to take your rake, you're going to throw it out in the lake just like last year. You're going to bring it in slowly, and you're going to see what you've collected. see. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to mention that I heard last year could have been a problem was that people were sometimes taking many samples in a location. Don't do that. Just take one sample, or if you happen to pull the rake in and there's not anything on it or something, maybe it's tipped and slid off, then go ahead and take another sample. But we don't want to disturb the lake bottom any more than necessary. So if you've tried it twice and you don't feel like you've got a good sample, that's okay. Just skip it and move on to your next site, or come back next week. That's okay, or 2 weeks from now. Okay, and the next photo over here, this is the lovely Jill Hamilton, who's on the call today, and Patty McDonald. This is on Scugog, and we had done the sample rake toss, and then Patty and Jill in the photo here, they're sorting all of their plants into groups. So, if you have 3 or 4 strands of Eurasian water milfoil, put those together, just put the things together that look the same. And then I would like you to try to identify them. Now, last year I gave people a couple of an invasive species guide, and also just a aquatic plant guide that I had. So you can use those, but Brooke in a little while is going to show us a couple of apps that we can use that might make that even easier for us. Now, you don't have to be able to name every plant, but it would be nice if you tried to learn to name a few. When I started doing this a couple of years ago, I literally could name Eurasian water milfoil and maybe eels grass. Everything else was just green stuff in the water. So, over time, you'll start to learn the names. But what's even more important than the names is learning to recognize what is usually in your lake. Because when an invasive species moves into the lake, you're going to recognize that it's something unusual. And that's the key to early detection of any invasive species, not just Starry Stonewort, is recognizing that something is different. So, so even just maybe not knowing the names, but knowing that you always see this, it's been here a long time. That's good. Nope, backwards again. Okay, so, okay, before I move on to this part, I should go back one. The other thing I wanted to mention, to keep in mind, is when you have sorted your samples and looked at them and identified them as best you can, please do not ball them up and throw them back in the lake. Invasive species like Eurasian water milfoil and Starry Stonewort as well that can spread by fragmentation. You don't want to be putting things back in the lake. So just take your samples away from the shoreline and just deposit it someplace else. Every time. Okay, so observations and reporting. Okay, so this is the part where we're going to do something different this year. As I mentioned earlier, we had EdMaps last year, and it was okay. They worked really hard to get that in there, but then it wasn't so user friendly. And for me, the thing that really made me want to change this is it also wasn't very fun. For most people, what you did last year was a negative report saying, I looked in the lake and I don't see any Starry Stonewort, because mostly Starry Stonewort is not that widespread, so most of us won't find it. So that's great, but it makes it kind of boring for you too. And also there was no encouragement to learn other plants. So this year, with the help of Brooke, who's always helping me, it seems, we're going to try doing a iNaturalist specific project for ourselves. When I first did this project in 2020 under the Starry Stonewort Collaborative for the Great Lakes Basin, we used a little app called Survey 123, and it was great because you could check off any of the plants you found. And also you could go into the specific project and see where other people were doing their rake tosses and what they were finding. So I really enjoyed that. But with EdMaps, yeah, I couldn't do that. And you couldn't do that either. So this way with iNaturalist, we'll have a specific project and we'll be able to see what each other is finding and where we're taking samples. So I think that makes it a lot more interesting. And it also makes it feel more like a little community that we're working on something together. And I think that makes a volunteer program a lot more appealing. So let's see. So I think that's about that. What else do I need to tell you? Oh, okay. Yeah, that's the other important thing. So iNaturalist, that's where we're putting our observations this year. And Brooke is going to show us how to do that in just a second. But not to worry. At the end of the season, if we have Starry Stonewort reports or observations that we're comfortable with, that have been verified as best we can visually, or even maybe voucher samples if Ontario Tech University folks are still willing to do that for us. then those results will be uploaded to EdMaps. So in the end, our observations do end up in EdMaps, but we haven't had to have the sort of turmoil of doing that. So that will be a lot better for us. All right, now I'm going to turn this over to Brooke if I can figure out how. And
Carol,
he's going to,
Carol,
yeah, yeah.
could I just jump in for 1 second while Brooke is getting set up?
Can I figure out how to stop sharing first?
Okay, sorry. I just,
Okay, go ahead, Patty. Yeah, go ahead.
it doesn't have to be visual or anything. I just, you mentioned about looking for something different. And that's exactly what happened to me back in 2018. I saw something different. I had no idea what
That's
it was.
right.
And then the following year, another year went by and all of a sudden I saw it was Starry Stonewort. So
Right. That's
to
right.
go back to your initial point about how difficult it is to identify, I think it's even harder to identify when nobody's actually seen it live.
Yes,
And
that's true.
And that's what we've tried to do the last couple of years because COVID and all the plans we had to make these demos live. So anyways, it's not that difficult once you see it. So that's it. My 2 points.
Thanks, Patty. Okay. All right. Thanks. All right. So if I stop sharing, is that what I do now? I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. There.
And then,
Okay. There we go. Oh, hello, folks. All
And
right.
then one other thing, Carol, you're gonna have to, I think, click on my face again, like the 3 little dots.
Oh, yes. So the 3 little dots. Yes. Thank you.
Oh, you know what? Never mind. It looks like I do have permission already to start sharing.
Oh, perfect.
So there we go. All right. Well, first of all, I guess I'll introduce myself. I'm sure many of you have run into me at some point or heard me speak, but my name is Brooke Schreier, and I'm the assistant coordinator / aquatic program specialist with the Invading Species Awareness Program. And I've been with the Invading Species Awareness Program for about 7 years, working on everything really related to aquatic invasive species, and even now jumping into the terrestrial invasive species, working on things like wild pigs. I run a number of community science programs, mystery snail program that I run in Haliburton County with 300 volunteers, removing Chinese and banded mystery snails. And then, like I said, the aforementioned wild pig surveillance program, I run that as well. So I do all sorts of stuff related to that. And today, Carol asked me to come in and help you folks. I guess, was it last week, Carol and I sat down and started a project for you guys within iNaturalist, because I think, Carol, you kind of relayed a number of criticisms towards EdMaps, and all of them are founded. And those are the types of criticisms that I've also had towards EdMaps over the years, is that it's kind of a one-way street of data. As a user, it's not the funnest to use. You will create a report, you'll submit that report, and that's kind of it. You will usually get an email back saying like confirmation or, needing additional information, or sometimes I'm deleting your report and here's why. But iNaturalist really affords you guys the opportunity to create that little community that you were speaking of. And I just wanted to, right off the hop, show you guys the project that I started, similar to the project that you guys are starting. Obviously, this one's a little bit broader because this is all invasive species in Ontario. And I started this in 2018. Yeah, 2018. And as you can see with these projects, what you do is you're setting a geographic boundary, and then you are setting a list of species that you care about. And then from there, what you're starting to do is populate that, right? Now, there's a fundamental difference between that project that I'm running and the project that you guys have, in that the reports that you're going to have within your project are going to be coming from you guys and you guys alone, okay? Now, the nice thing is, once you guys join this project, as you can see, I'm a member here, and I'm going to walk you through really quickly how to create a profile, get on here and start reporting in a few minutes. But the big thing is once you do start reporting, you don't necessarily have to, navigate to the project. What you just need to do is submit an observation, okay? So if you're out there and you're doing rake tosses and you come across, whatever it is, and you're not necessarily sure, and you pull it out and you click a photo and you upload a report, if it falls within the rules set out by the project that Carol and I worked on, it's going to be automatically pulled into the project, okay? So really, after joining this, which again, I'll show you in a few minutes, all you have to do is submit reports. You just have to go out, do your reporting, submit as much data as you can alongside that, those photos and whatnot, and go from there, okay? So let's sign up. I have my core email that I use for iNaturalist. Then I have another like third email that I use today just to practice this. And then now I'm using a secondary email in order to create another account today to show you folks, okay? So the first thing you're gonna do is navigate to inaturalist.org, okay? Once you're here, you see it up here, you use your Google browser, you're gonna go to sign up. You can click it basically anywhere, there's all sorts of spots. And we're gonna use a new email today. So we're gonna use Brooke Schreier at trentu.ca because I'm repping Trent today because I spent 7 years there, long 7 years. And then we're going to call ourselves Invading Species Awareness Program. And then create yourself a password, right? Something that you're going to remember, something, you know, that you're not going to forget and have to recover it like I frequently have to because I'm awful with passwords. I am not a robot. You're going to do all these things that you consent to because it's the nature of websites nowadays. They often mine your data and send it to other people. So it's just, it is what it is. And then you're going to create an account. And if all goes well, it should create an account for you. And then you're going to have this, which is what's essentially called your dashboard. Okay. So this is just trying to get you started. And by the way, before I even like really show you guys how to submit reports, just remember with all these websites, there's always great tools available, right? If you look up on iNaturalist and just start exploring and asking for help and all those types of things like video tutorials, managing projects, all of that, all this information is going to be right at your fingertips. Okay. So you don't necessarily need somebody like me to tell you, but it is nice to be able to show you some of the stuff that I've learned. Okay. So then you've got your home, your profile, your observations. So once you start submitting those observations throughout the summer, if you want to revisit any of them, you can go here and you'll see them. And as you can see, I don't have any right now, right? So what we're going to do is we're actually going to upload a report. So now you have a profile, and actually, hang on, before we do that, we're going to go to find the group that you're going to be joining, okay? So if you just look up Kawartha Lakes, you're going to see right here, Kawartha Lakes Stewards Aquatic Plant Survey. So if you click on it, you're going to see that you have the ability to join this project. So before you start submitting reports, just make sure you do this first. Okay, come here and join the project. All you have to do is click right here, join project. And as you can see, 5 people have already done that. I'm assuming that's Carol, myself, and 3 others. And then once you guys start populating it with data and with reports, you're going to see all that type of information show up here. But right now, it's in its infancy, but it does have a nice banner and a nice logo and all that fun stuff. So that being said, I am not going to join it right now. And the reason being is that if I join it and then submit a mock entry, remember what I said before, it'll auto-populate it. And I don't want that. I don't want my report that I'm going to submit right now to come into this project. So I'm not going to join it, but you would join it and then submit reports. So the first thing we're going to do when you want to submit a report is go to upload. And then you're going to choose your files. In this case, you could either just have the photos on your desktop of your computer and you could drag them. Okay, you just select them, drag them over here and just drop them and it'll auto-populate. Or you can click choose files. Okay, in this case, I'm going to choose files. I'm going to navigate to the files that I had on my desktop, which are these 2 right here. Obviously, save it as something that is indicative for you. We're going to do this. And as you can see, I have 2 separate reports. These are 2 separate reports. Okay, so you can submit basically as many reports as you want at one time. And it's going to populate when the photos were taken. As you can see, I stole these photos from online. This is somebody who gave us permission to use these photos back in the day. And you can see it auto-populated the date, right? It shows that these photos were from 2008. Now, that being said, obviously, you're going to include updated information. But, you know, you might say, well, these are the same report. How do I do that? You're going to just drag this and put it like that. I don't know if you saw that, but what it does is it make sure that all of those go into the same thing. Because if it's just one observation, you're like, well, I don't want to make 3 or 4 different observations. In this case, it's just one. Well, you can do that, okay? Alternatively, if you want, what you can do is we're going to get rid of these. Actually, we're going to add get rid of this as well, remove. We're going to do it again because I'll show you a different way of doing that, okay? So let's say, again, you have 5 photos that you just dragged over. They're all from the same report. Instead of dragging them one at a time, what you can do is just go like this, right? Select them all, just make that box like this. And once you've done that, you can combine them. And all you have to do is click combine. Again, it'll combine it into one report. And then what you can do is come down here, species name. It's going to give you suggestions, and it's going to be right in the circumstance. It's giving us the genus, which is milfoils, Myriophyllum, but top suggestions, Eurasian water milfoil, which is spot on. So right there, iNaturalist is using its data, its data that it has built into the system to recognize that that is Eurasian water milfoil. So we're going to select Eurasian water milfoil. And if you don't know, typically it'll give you the genus, and you always want to start high, right? You don't want to go right down to species if you don't know. If it's suggesting genuses, select those if you don't know for a fact. In this case, I know for a fact it's Eurasian water milfoil. Then we're going to select location, okay? The date was auto-populated. You can put the day of your observation. Let's say you go out this Saturday, you're going to put this Saturday at such and such a time, okay? Here, you're just going to use your mouse. You're just going to use your cursor. You're going to drag it along, and then you're going to use your mouse wheel, and you're going to zoom in, right? And we're going to zoom in my case, right to, let's say, where I live, which is just near Ennismore. So then you're going to use your mouse again, and you're just going to click where the observation was made, okay? And you can get real specific if you want, and you can like make it as, you know, specific to that location as you want. And then as you can see here, it's auto-populating the latitude and longitude. And then we're going to say update observation. So just like that. And then if there's any notes you want to make, you can do that too. Here's the place to put them. And then once you're done with that, we can even see here, projects, add to a project. Now this should just happen automatically, okay? Again, because the species that you guys are fundamentally reporting are going to be pulled into the project as long as you're a member. So make sure the first thing you do, as I said, is join that project, the Kawartha Lakes Aquatic Plant Survey. And then after that, you can start submitting reports. So you don't necessarily have to do this part right here, okay? So then all we're going to do is submit the observation, and then it's going to go out into the nether, right? And like I said, because it's Eurasian water milfoil, we obviously have Myriophyllum as one of the groups within that project. So it's going to pull it into that project. And that's it. So then now you can see, you can look at this report. We're under our dashboard again, and you can see the observations, all the information that we just submitted, and you can see that it needs identification. So if I were to look at this actual report, then you would see here that it's going to require some other people to take a look at it, right? And this is the fun part of iNaturalist, and this is why it kind of stands off on its own, is because it's a database of naturalists that are all working together to identify things. One of the limitations of EDMAPS is that, well, one of its strengths and its limitations at the same time is the fact that it's a bottleneck, because all the reports that go through EDMAPS come to myself and about 4 other people. And we are required to then look at every single report, hope to God, as Carol said, that there's good photos, and then be able to confirm or deny. Oftentimes we'll use experts, we'll send photos off to experts and wait, you know, like a week to hear back. So it's kind of a slower process. Whereas with this, if any of you guys were to log on now, you could find this report and you could come here and be like, yeah, you know what? I know for a fact that's Eurasian water milfoil. And then you could agree with my identification. Alternatively, if an expert comes on here, and I've done it a few times where I'll come on and I see somebody's identified something as something that's incorrect, you can then suggest an identification and try to correct them. So it's a fun little database, but really, you know, the real goal of this is going to be ensuring that you guys have that place where you guys can, you know, submit that data. So real quick, I'm going to log out here. I'm going to go back onto my main account. Unless are there any questions around creating an account? I mean, uploading is pretty easy. Oh, and real quick, the application is even easier. Like this is actually a little bit harder because you guys are going to have to facilitate getting the photos onto your desktop and then, you know, uploading it that way. Whereas if you do it with a cell phone, like a smartphone, whether it's an iPhone or an Android, the application is very simple. I was just playing around with it. Honestly, as long as you log in, the very biggest button is observe. You click on it, it'll ask you for access to your camera. And also just before, I actually tried to pull up like a cell phone version of this website for you, Carol, so I could actually show people what it looks like on the cell phone. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that. Okay. But once you do click observation, what it's going to do or observe, it's going to, you know, ask you for the camera. and then it's going to auto-populate basically the majority of the data. It's going to tell you where you are. It's going to tell you, you know, what time it is. It's going to tell you all that stuff, so you don't have to plug it in. So it's nice. It's basically georeferencing you based on your cell phone, which is, you know, a lot of people's criticisms around cell phones is that stuff. So we're going to log back in with my, yes, Alan, you have a question?
Yeah,
Wait a minute, you gotta.
I did. I've been trying to follow along. I have iNaturalist on my iPhone.
Yeah.
And so I've got into the Kawartha Lake Stewards Aquatic Plant ID.
Perfect.
And of course, there's a lot less than there is on your screen.
Yeah.
And so I'm just taking on faith that what you say is, because I'm thinking if we go out on our lake,
Yeah.
it's huge. I mean, it's big, and there are going to be several places down in the southern end that we'd like to sample.
Yep.
And we can ID the locations if we have the phone with us.
Right.
You know, we can get that set. And so I want to try to do as much as I can with the phone.
Yep.
So,
And
Alan?
so
Yeah.
I'm not seeing a lot of translation from what you were doing on screen,
yeah, and
what I'm seeing on the phone yet.
if I could for 1 sec, Alan, this is Bob.
Yeah.
So if you look at the Kawartha Lake Stewards Aquatic Plant Survey group that Brooke was talking about now,
Yeah.
you'll see that I joined it as he told us to, and automatically the plants that I got with my iPhone, just like you do, were uploaded into the group. So those, and you can see that I'm number one. I don't know how long that'll last. But the few aquatic macrophytes that I have in there just automatically went from my iNaturalist account into the group when I joined it. So just keep doing what you're doing. I was going to say, I said to Carol offline, it's so easy for not just macrophytes, obviously, but anything that I see when I'm walking around. And you can tell if the photo is good enough. You know, when you take a photo of something you think you've got, and you've probably done this a million times, Alan, and you ask for suggestions, that will tell you whether or not you've got a good enough photo for fellow experts even to make a guess. But then, as Brooke was saying, when I do that with whatever, insects, plants, then others will come on to gently or not so gently tell me that, oh, maybe it's this rather than what you thought it was. So it's a great tool. But yeah, the automatic upload of what we do into the group is beautiful. I love it, Brooke. Thanks.
Okay, one question about that automatic upload. And that is, if I'm out there taking something that has nothing to do with this project, does it automatically populate into this project?
It may, as long as it falls within the guidelines of the project. So if it's a plant, obviously we've only included, and that's why I wanted to show you guys, is kind of like the back end, because we included all the different, you know, families and genuses of all the plants.
Of aquatic plants. Yeah, just aquatic plants though.
As well as some riparian, like Phragmites.
Right.
I think we also included, some other riparian species.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of other stuff that I've got around Lower Buckhorn there, Alan, that didn't get put into the group because, as Brooke was saying, it's not in the hit list of aquatic macrophytes
That's a good way of putting it.
Uh,
that this is looking for. So I got a bunch of insects, mammals, bird, whatever. They didn't go in, even though they're within the area.
Right.
Okay, now another question. I've also got Seek on my phone, which is allied with iNaturalist.
Yeah, that was my next. That was actually my next conversation, which is
Okay,
awesome,
wait.
Alan. It's awesome that you have that. Because so guys, there's also another app, as Alan just mentioned, that's called Seek. It's SEEK. And what's really cool about Seek is that without even necessarily making a report, I actually just use it as an identification tool a lot of the times. And what you can do is you can pull it open, it'll get access to your camera. And as Alan said, it's linked to iNaturalist, so you can link it to your account. So you can actually just go through Seek. You can just use Seek and you go out there, you point it out like a plant, and it'll actually do similar to what iNaturalist does, but it'll tell you in real time, like, we think that it's this, you know, we think we can get it down to the genus, or like maybe the family, the genus, or we can get it right down to the specific species. And then, which is awesome, right? And then you can snap that photo and then link it back to iNaturalist. So this is very user friendly. And I know, Alan, the desktop is the least user-friendly out of all of it. And unfortunately, just given the medium that we're using today, that's the way I can show you, right? If we were in person, I'd be showing you the application. And, you know, as you said, it's pretty easy on your phone. Now, the only thing I would encourage you to do when you're using your phone to be mindful of is when you go to submit a report, you almost want to do it instantaneously once it's been pulled. Because let's say you're in your boat and you pull out, you know, a throw and you put it on your boat, and it's really windy day and you're kind of like blowing down, you know, river. You've moved, you know, 50 meters before you snap that photograph. You know, there is always a little bit of variance in how specific the georeferencing is, 5-10 meters, you know. But if you've moved 100 meters and then you're submitting that report, it's going to submit that report from 100 meters from where you actually collected it, right? So keep that in mind, you guys, when you're doing that collection with the app, that you want to do it almost as soon as possible so that you get that specific georeferencing. So,
Okay.
yeah, and that's almost it. Sorry, go ahead, Carol.
I was going to say, one of the things about that was I'd never used iNaturalist until a few years ago, and the first time I was using it, I somehow had you know, aquatic plant observations like way up on the shoreline because I must have floated around, or I'm not sure what I had done. But you can go back in and correct that too, right?
Exactly.
If you remember where you were, you can, you know, make it a lot closer. I mean, I knew I was in front of a marina, I was not down the shore, so I just went back in, edited my little spot, and that was fine. The app is what I would prefer you to use, obviously, because it's way easier than this. So, and I will send out something that kind of shows that a little easier. I'll just do a quick thing. And I also made a little document showing how to sign up if you don't already have an account. So we'll send those along today. So it just makes it easier. And then any questions at all, you can just always, you know, shoot me an email and we can talk on the phone and I can walk you through it. I have no problem at all with that.
Carol probably has more experience with iNaturalist than I do, which is the irony of this thing. Because
but I was afraid to do this, so Brick is helping me.
But you guys, like, this is what it looks like, right? Like, this is what your project page is going to look like.
Yeah.
You know, Bob Bailey said, you know, like here's his observations, because he's the only person thus far that has submitted observations. And this is where you guys can actually go in. I don't know if you guys saw me because I forgot I was sharing my screen. But you can see that by going into the individual reports, you can take a look at the photos, you can get real nice and close, you can see where they're from, and then you can offer your opinion on the identification. In this case, northern milfoil is my opinion, right? And the reason why is because of leaflet count. So if we look at the leaflet count on individual leaves of this species, it's always below 12, right? So they're much more sparse than that of Eurasian water milfoil, which is always 12 or more of these right here on a single leaf, okay?
We're learning already.
Yeah. And then, you know, common waterweed, Alodia canadensis, and then all the other ones. So yeah, these are all perfect. But these are the types of photos you want to submit, right? Like you want to pull them out of water, and I'm sure, Carol, you're going to go into it, so I won't talk about it too much, but just make sure you get the leaves, you get the stems. And also, it's always never a bad idea to get a picture of them in the water to get like a sense of the population size. That's always helpful as well. But with that, unless there's any questions for me specifically about iNaturalist or EdMaps or the Invading Species Awareness Program, I'll pass it back over to Carol.
Okay. We're good for now? Okay. We can always talk about it later.
I'm going to stop sharing now, Carol.
Oh, okay. All right.
Back to you.
Back to me. Oh, oh God. As soon as I figured it out again. Oh, and now I've lost my, oh, great. All right, there. That wasn't too painful. I managed to find my way back. All right. Okay. So now we've done the reporting. iNaturalist is, you know, when you start looking at the app, which you can just download, you're going to be surprised how easy it is. So that's okay. I think we'll be all right with that once you start looking at it. And then, like I said, anytime you have any trouble, just, you know, shoot me an email and I can either walk you through it or I'll find somebody else that can. Okay, so now we know we're going to do our samples. We're going to sort them. We're going to try to identify as much as we can. We're going to take really good photos as best we can. And we're going to submit them in our reporting app. So that's great. So where I want you to do this, same as last year, I'd like you to pick 1 to 3 locations, you know, it really is dependent on how much time you have and how much time you want to spend doing this. But I wouldn't do more than 3. That gets to be sort of cumbersome. So my preference is public areas. So public boat launches, marinas, any places where boats gather, or also your own shoreline and dock. I know the Court of Conservation folks last year, because they were doing near-shore monitoring of their own shoreline, that's where most of their sampling was done, and that's perfectly fine. But if you happen to be, close to a public dock or a marina, if you could sample there, that would be great. If you do sample in a marina, please make sure you ask permission of the marina owner and let them at least know what you're doing. That people were very happy to have you usually. I mean, I usually just go and say, I'm a community scientist and we're doing a macrophyte survey, and would you mind if I take samples here? And they're fine with that. And if they're not fine with it, then just find someplace else, because you don't want to do something like that. And the reason I want the public boat launches and marinas are mostly because, the main pathway of aquatic invasive species are watercraft. We are moving most of the invasive species from place to place on our own, which is sort of depressing, and we could easily stop if we really put our minds to it, but that's how it is. So that's where a new invasive species on a lake is more likely to show up, is at a boat launch. So if you could do that, that would be great. We have in our photos here, this is David Sutton on Stony Lake, and David's actually at a public boat launch, and he's just doing it right from the little dock there. That's great. And this is Doug Dewar on Big Bald Lake, and Doug is a big fisherman, so he quite often is out in small bays. So that's where he chose to do his sampling, was small bays out around, well, some not so small bays too, but out in his boat, and that was great. I would like you to do your sampling bi-weekly, starting in mid-July after all the fish spawning and all that's over, and go to the end of September if possible. Now, I know a lot of people are not still on the lake in September, so just do as long as you can, as best as you can. And that's quite enough. Well, I'm just looking, there's a chat thing there. Oh, okay, so negative reports. Whoops. Hold on a sec. I don't know how to get rid of the chat thing now. No. Shoot. Anybody know how to get rid of that? No.
Sorry, what are you trying to get rid of?
Oh, I can see the chat thing right in the middle of my slide.
You can
You just drag it, Carol. You should be able to.
Oh, can I just drag it
move it?
away?
Yeah.
Oh, I moved that instead. No.
MacBooks, eh? Just the
Why had to
word.
go over here? Yeah, it's dumb to do something like this and also learn a new computer. So anyway, that was just not good planning on my part. So now I forgot what I was telling you. Oh God. Okay. Anyway, so bi-weekly is what I was looking for. But again, just do the best you can. I wish I knew how to close that. No, that's even worse. Okay, there. Oh, there we are. Okay. So yeah, so just do the best you can. That would be great. Oh, yes, that was something else I wanted to mention. So when I'm saying, do it from the same place, so you pick your 3 places and that's where you go. So I do 2 marinas and my own shoreline. Again, like I mentioned before, you do not have to be standing in exactly the same place and trying to get your rake the same place. I had people trying that last year. So I would actually prefer you moved around a little bit in this space, because you can throw your rake, 2 feet further left and actually find Starry Stonewort. Because chances are it's a small patch, you don't even see it. And just, move around a little bit, that's perfectly fine. Okay, the identification, that's the tricky part. Now, I don't know how to, uh-oh, okay. Nope. All right, guys, I'm gonna escape from here. Nope, I am not. Oh, shoot. Oh, no. Okay. Oh. So how do I get back to my, I'd like to be able to see the rest of my tabs on my computer. Anybody know how to do that?
Yeah, if you go up, you can shrink this window. Yeah, just the one on the right. Yeah. Try that one.
Ah, thank you. Okay.
And then you can grab it and kind of grab it in the corner, and you can kind of shrink it a bit.
Grab it in the corner.
Like the corner of the window.
This?
Yeah, you'll see that. Yeah, and then just kind of pull it. Yeah.
All right, good enough. Okay, I don't know what I'm doing. Sorry about this, guys. This is why Bob is here, because I literally don't know what I'm doing. Okay,
Well,
so
Lot.
oh, that's okay. So I wanted to look at our identification problem. That was my big thing here. So what I wanted to look at, okay, so this is posted on the Invasive Species Center's website. It is not the best picture of Starry Stonewort I've ever seen, but it gives me a chance to tell you a few things that I was hoping you'd notice. Okay, so, all right. So when you look at Starry Stonewort, which this is, all right, you can see that it's got the long middle stem or thallus, whatever you want to call it. And out from that, you have branchlets around the stem in a whorl, okay? There's always 5 to 8 of those little branches around there. This person says 6, but it can be 5, it can be 8. And they're usually irregular. The branches, the part that I would like you to notice is this part. It's called a bract cell or a bract, and our native species don't have that. So if you can find this on your sample, that's a good indicator that we're looking at something different. And that's something that Tyler Harold Lyle from Ontario Tech University has been trying to get in my head for 2 years now. Okay, so that is one of the things to look for that is slightly different. All right. The other thing, one of the other things I want you to understand is doing this sort of sampling out on a lake can cause you to do peculiar things. One of the ways I know that what I'm holding in my hand is not a native Cara like muskgrass is by smelling it. Muskgrass stinks. Starry Stonewort has no odor. Okay, so that's something to remember. Another thing that's really interesting is that Starry Stonewort, when you take a piece of Starry Stonewort out of the water, unlike a native Cara, it actually maintains its shape. When you take muskgrass out of the water, it gets all droopy and limp, and that's sort of the end of it. But this actually keeps its shape, which is neat. And in a minute, when we look at some photos of samples, you'll see what I'm talking about. It basically doesn't collapse. The other thing, on our identification sheet that we had last year, Tyler mentioned that it's usually sort of messy and tangled looking. That's for sure. I have never found a single strand of Starry Stonewort just beautifully presented in the water by itself, just standing there in all its glory. It's always that I've ever found tangled and messy to find. The other thing is it's quite often tangled with native species, which we'll talk about again in a minute. But it's just the tangled nature of it. It's got these branchlets everywhere, and other pieces going off from the sides, and then you got the bract cell, so it just tangles easily. All right. Okay. Sometimes you are going to find little small orange balls, which they don't have on this diagram, which I find depressing. But usually at like where the little bract cells are or the branchlets are, they can be little orange or red balls. That's the antheridia, and those are actually literally it's balls. It's the male sex organ. So sometimes you'll find that, and I'll show you another picture. But what I really want you to realize is that at the very bottom, and this is something I don't think we always understand, we're looking for these star things. I've had people send me pictures of eel's grass because it gets the little white flower on the top, thinking that that's Starry Stonewort. The starry part, the little bulbil here, is found at the base of phallus, way down here, and there's usually a clear monofilament, and then the star is on that. So it's not a flower, it's not up here somewhere. It's going to be usually at the bottom on a little monofilament. Now, last year, if you remember, and hopefully you still have it, we received this handy dandy guide from Tyler Harold Lyle and Andrea Kirkwood and Shelby from Ontario Tech University. They made this up for us, which was great. Let's move it up a bit. Okay, and this is what I wanted to go over. So when you're out and you get your samples out of the water, take a look and see if it matches up with what Tyler's telling us here. Okay, it's likely tangled, which it's likely always to be tangled. It can feel relatively smooth. It is definitely smoother than our native muskgrass, things like that. They tend to be way more rough on the outside, at least from what I've ever found. Okay. It says it often has a tangled appearance. Yes, it does. The stems could be different lengths. The branchlets can be different lengths. it's very variable, which is one of the problems with it, because you're looking up for something specific. It has a lot of variety. It really depends on where it's growing. Let's see. Okay, now you take a look at Tyler's hand. I'm assuming that's Tyler. And you can see it's still rigid. It's not limp. It's not laying down over his fingers. And here's this little bract cell here, and it makes this little forked appearance on the end of the branch, right? So that's one of the things to look for. Yeah, and here too, you can see the whorl. So there's your thallus, and there's all your little branches coming off of it, right? And each of those little branches will probably have a bract cell, and that's what we're going to look for now. Here he's got his picture of the clear monofilament that's at the bottom. It's hard because he's got to cover it up with the label, but it's a clear monofilament. And if you've ever eaten Chinese rice noodles and they're really clear once you cook them, that's kind of what it looks like to me. Tyler describes it, says it looks like fishing line, but I always think rice noodle when I see it. And this is the small star-shaped bulb. Now that may or may not be present if you pull your sample. Personally, for me, if I don't see that, I'm never sure it's actually Starry Stonewort. So I will, if I start sampling and I don't see it, I will sample there again. And, and then once I finally find that, which I usually do, I'll know for sure. Okay, so down at the bottom, here's the ones that he's warning us to be careful of confusion. All right, so we've got our normal muskgrass. The smell test is the best one for that. Nutella is one that I think on Stony Lake we mix up with Starry Stonewort a lot. It grows in nice, tidy mats, that look a lot like Starry Stonewort. And Starry Stonewort on our lake is often mixed in with this. So we have patches of Starry Stonewort in the lake, but it's definitely mixed with the normal Nutella. So that's one of those things we want to be careful of. Okay, on the back of the card from Tyler and Dr. Kirkwood and Shelby last year, he put a little checklist for us. It's a good checklist. It gets a little confusing because now we're telling you the specimens could be bright green, yellow, brown, black. I would guess a lot of the times the Starry Stonewort is going to be green where we're looking. It can vary according to environmental conditions. I understand that, but for the most part, what you're looking for is likely green. Smooth or rough stems, that's great, except the rough stem is actually not the stem itself is rough. It's actually like calcium or other minerals on the stem, so it feels that way. Specimen with multiple stems has a messy tangled appearance, that's for sure, and that's not hard to see when you pick things out of the water. The no noticeable order and the irregular whorls, 5 to 8 branches, and that's one of the things you're going to want to do. You're going to try to get a piece. The tricky part is untangling it so you can get a good look at it, because it's usually so tangled. It's hard to get the whole whorl that you don't break when you're trying to get it apart. Okay, the small antheridia, they may not be present, and that's fine. And the star-shaped bubbles at the bottom also may not be present. But again, I keep looking, and you don't have to enter it as Starry Stonewort right off the bat. You could enter it as a stonewort or just a charophyte. Just enter it as that, and then we'll just keep looking. And when you go back, we can see we can sort of add to that observation over time over the summer, and that will be fine with me. So now I'm just going to pull up some photos that I've been using myself. Okay, so yeah, okay, so I wanted to show you some examples of terrible photos. so this, okay, I have to move this thing. There we go. Okay, when I first started taking pictures, I would pull, I would put a rake in and look, and this is what I would find. Yes, that is a tangled mass of something. But sending this off to a verifier to say, hey, did I find Starry Stonewort? Not particularly useful. There's no way to tell if this is regular Nutella. Well, maybe if you're really expert, you could tell, but I couldn't tell looking at this today that there's Starry Stonewort there. I wouldn't want to say there was. You have got eels grass mixed in. I also have a lot of photos that look similar to this, and half of them are mud covered. If you have a sample, rinse it at least so you can at least see what you're looking at. That is not a photo I would submit anymore. Let's see. Okay, this is a little bit better. at least I'm sort of showing something that could be Starry Stonewort indicative. There are at least, it looks like, if I move in here, you can see that there's a clear monofilament here that looks slightly suspicious. But if you look at the way I photographed this, I mean, is that star shaped? Is this star shaped? Who knows? This one here kind of looks like it probably is. But again, that's not a photo I would submit today, because it's just not clear enough. I can't ask someone to say, yes, that's Starry Stonewort without being able to actually see anything. I also used to do this, which was not such a great thing. So yes, I did find a star-shaped bulbil, but what is that attached to? That means there was at least a bulbil in the lake, but whether or not there was a plant, there's no way to tell. This is better. Still not the best photo, but at least if you zoom in on it, you can see that yes, we have the clear monofilament, and yes, that is definitely a star-shaped bulbil. Okay, so at least that much is obvious. There is at least one distinguishing characteristic. So I would probably submit that and then hope for better photos. Okay. This is getting to be more what I would like to see. Okay, so you have the clear monofilament, and you can see that there's star shapes, and then you're also able to see the actual a strand of the plant itself. Okay, so that is a little bit more useful. This photo I wanted to show you because the bright greenness of it is always kind of fascinating to me. This is a rake of Starry Stonewort in a small bay that we found last year. And I normally wouldn't want to say, looking at that is Starry Stonewort, because I can't see an awful lot there. If I zoom in a lot, I think there's some antheridia obvious on there. Yeah, so there is some antheridia in there, but the only reason I wanted to show you that is because the color was so vivid last summer in this little bay. And I know that this is likely Starry Stonewort because it was used for Shelby from Ontario Tech University's. She used this photo in her thesis presentation. So I was like, okay, so that one I wasn't wrong about. But it's the color that I found really interesting. It was brighter than usual. Let's see. Okay, now this is a better photo that I finally starting to figure out. So you can see the branchlets, but you can also see the antheridia here. And obviously you can see the bracts on there as well. So that's a photo that I would be much more happy to submit now. I would still probably send a photo or a section of the, like the tangled mass, so you can see sort of, how it is, because that's how Starry Stonewort presents in the tangled mass. But I can also see some of the actual plant structure and some of the distinguishing characteristics that would allow a verifier to say, yeah, that might be it. Okay, and again with this one, you can see the lovely. I actually find Starry Stonewort very lovely and attractive, so there's something strange about me, but there we go. So that's, there's the nice thallus there, and then the lovely little branchlets, and I love how it holds its shape. This is the white bins that we give you, and that's a nice background for a picture of Starry Stonewort. The problem with Starry Stonewort I find is that the whole stem and everything tends to be so long, it's hard to find a place to put it. Okay. Yeah, and again, tangled photos, not so great, covered in mud, things you want to avoid when you're doing photos yourself. So yeah, so I think that's enough of that. All right, okay. So hopefully you have a little bit better sense of what I would like you to do. Again, if you find stuff with iNaturalist, we can put in that it's a charophyte. We could tell that much from it. And then we can see if we can narrow it down based on your photos. And, is it Nutella? Is it Polypellet? Is it, is it muskgrass? We can hopefully sort of narrow it down. So like Brooke was saying, you don't have to say right away it's Starry Stonewort. You can say you're pretty sure it's a charophyte, and we can work from there. Okay. And we do have lots of not lots of experts, but we have experts that we can turn to see, what they think as well.
Hey, Carol,
Okay.
would you mind if I jumped in for a second? Because
yes, please do.
Lake Association, sorry, I don't know the name. I'd asked a question before about submitting negative reports in.
Oh, okay, yes, yeah. I'm not going to do negative reports this year. What I would like you to do is, just concentrate on trying to identify the plants in your sample and And, what I would like you to do is at least, try to do one plant observation that you can enter with iNaturalist each time you're out, because then I'm going to know where you are and what you're looking at. If you don't put in that you see Starry Stonewort, I'm going to assume you didn't find any. All right. Does that make sense? I didn't find the negative reports that helpful last year. And I know it does say where it isn't, but also where we're looking. If you don't put it in, I'm going to assume it isn't there or that you didn't see it. Okay.
Yeah, and
does that
one
make
other
sense?
thing- Yeah, it makes total sense, Carol. And just one other thing. Yeah, because I guess iNaturalist doesn't really afford you the opportunity to submit negative reports as EdMaps does, right?
No.
What it's trying
Right.
to do is tell you what it is you do have rather than what you don't
Right.
have.
Right.
That's kind of a function of EdMaps to say, like, I didn't find Starry Stonewort here to give us kind of a bigger picture view of where it is and where it isn't. Now, the one other thing that I want to say is whenever people are doing these rake tosses, and maybe you mentioned this, but I had to step away for a second. So if you pull out a rake mass of vegetation, use your due diligence to try to separate it as much as you can into the different species to submit like individual reports, right? Because to submit one photo with 5 different plants, it's going to slightly mess with, the system and trying to identify what it is that you have. And it won't be able to necessarily get down to a species level because it might just see so many different things. So do what you can to separate, the Elodias from the Vallisneria, from the Myriophyllums, like separate all the species as best as you can, and then take those photos and submit them.
Yeah, and that's going back to our sort step, right? So it's sample, sort, identify, report, right? So I think that works out good.
Carol.
Okay. Yes.
Quick
Hi,
question.
Michelle.
Hi.
Sure.
So you don't want negative reports, but by submitting the samples, the individual samples of the stuff you collect out of the water, is that not essentially a negative report if you don't find Starry Stonewort?
Yes, but it's not flagged in the system as a negative report. Basically, what it is you're going to say, I found Eurasian water milfoil. I found a lily pad. I have some Canadian waterweed. For me, the big thing is always pondweed. My goal this summer is to actually learn to tell one pondweed from another. So, but when you tell me you found those things and you don't tell me you found Starry Stonewort, I know you didn't, right? Because if you found something you thought was Starry Stonewort, you're gonna enter that as at least a charophyte, and we'll be looking at it. The other thing is if you find something you think might be Starry Stonewort, but you're not comfortable putting it in iNaturalist, take a picture and just send it to me. Okay. And then when I look at it, if I think, I'm certainly not a scientist in any way, but I can tell if it's got at least something that makes me think it could be. And at that point, we can send it to an actual scientist, the photo, and they can even tell us, that might be, but please go take a photo of, and find, Brack cells or something. Or they can also let us submit a voucher sample if we're not sure, but, they think it looks suspicious enough. So we can continue those pieces. So to begin with, just, do the top level and say, you found a macroalgae or a charophyte, and we can work down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And so if we do find Starry Stonewort, then we actually take that sample and physically mail it in.
Well, if you find the first step will be that you'll, take a really good couple of photos, take a photo of the nice tangled mess that it's bound to be, and then also try to get a strand that shows some of the identifying characteristics that Tyler lists right here.
Yeah.
Right. So make sure you can see some of those things in your photo and that it's nice and clear. So I can send it to Shelby or Tyler or Dr. Kirkwood or someone else to take a look. And, and if they think it is Starry Stonewort, then we're safe to say it is. Okay. And then if we have, oh, sorry, what was that?
And we're not actually physically sending in samples, because last year that was a discussion. Okay.
Yeah, we may, if we get photos of something that looks suspiciously like Starry Stonewort, but as Tyler says, it can look very different depending on where you are and things like that. Or maybe, there's no, you can't seem to find a bulbil, but it has the whorls, it has a Brack cell, it looks like it's suspicious enough. Then we may collect a sample and send it in. Last year we had some samples sent in that weren't done properly either. We didn't dry them long enough. They got smushed and they were just like a pile of slime once they got to Tyler and the rest of the folks at the lab. So if we get to that stage, I'm going to make sure we get much clearer instructions and that we try to do a better job of that. But we'll just take it one step at a time first and get a good photo and see what they think. And if they think it's worth a sample, then that's what we'll do. Okay.
Yeah. And maybe on that note, Carol, two things. One is from the group that we have on iNaturalist. So we'll be able to dump a report at the end of the year, which has, date of sampling, location, and what people found. So in that sense, we'll have recorded where Starry Stonewort was and wasn't on each date in each place. The other thing I would suggest is if people, and I think both you and Brooke mentioned this, but if people think they might have Starry, but they're not sure, it's still possible to upload those photos into iNaturalist. Then everybody will be able to look at them, and we can edit the ID. Other input can come in to edit the ID and say, oh, actually, this is Nitella, or this is Tara, or this is indeed Starry, in my opinion. So there's that step even before we get to the point of sending photos to you or Tyler or whoever. So and that's a way, if you're not sure, the same kind of photo that you'd put up for another Myriophyllum or whatever, just do it with that, but only look for the suggestions that you get in iNaturalist, and maybe you're just saying Charophyte or whatever. But
that's right.
That's a great tool.
So just and that's why I was really excited about this, is because you don't have to say right off the bat that it's Starry Stonewort, but we can have other people look at it. Now, the only problem with this sometimes with iNaturalist is people who don't really know what they're looking at will chime in. I'm not sure if they can do it when it's a specific project, but I'm afraid they might be able to. So there's one gentleman, Roman Romanoff, who is always approving Starry Stonewort things. He doesn't necessarily know what he's looking at. And we can still edit it, and we can make a note that, even though Roman Romanoff says it's Starry Stonewort, that, our experts and our group here know that this is actually Nitella. Okay. So
and when you do a submission, as I found many times, I get people suggesting something. Sometimes I agree, sometimes I don't, and I sort of have the last call. So you can agree with what somebody's modified your thing to or not. So good. And there's a record of all of that there with the submission. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, which means there'll be a discussion, which is nice, and that's a good learning tool too. Because if we put in something and we say we're pretty sure this is it, and then an expert or Bob or an expert or Bob, that didn't sound right, Bob the expert, or someone looks at it and says, no, this is not Starry Stonewort, because look, there's no Bragg cells, there's no whatever, it's well, we can have a discussion and hopefully learn from that as well. So it's a learning thing that we're doing here. We're not experts, we're never going to be experts, but we'll do the best we can. So that sound good, everybody? I hope. Okay, so I guess I will try to do one more little miscellaneous thing here, and then I will let you get out of here. Oh, that goes right to the top. Just a sec. Zip. All the way to the bottom. If I ever do this again, I will try to be better at zooming things. Okay, so miscellaneous things. The people who don't have equipment already, I will be getting that to you and contacting you shortly as to how I'm going to get that to you. And I just want you to really remember the sample, sort, identify, report. And again, we've got iNaturalist this time. It'll be a little bit more fun, and you can check in our project and see what everybody else is doing. But the best thing I want you to do this summer, doing this for me and Kawartha Lake Stewards, is to have fun and get out there, enjoy what you're doing, play with the plants and learn a few things, and just do the best you can, and don't stress about it. I know sometimes, we really want to do research grade things, and we're not scientists. We will do the best we can. And I think that's good enough. Okay, so I think that's it for me. I'm going to stop sharing if I could figure out how to do that. Oh, there we go. There. Hello, everyone. Now I can see you. So anyway, so is there any other questions? Have I scared anyone away? Please don't be scared, because it's not as hard as I make it sound.
Yeah, I had a question.
Go ahead, Alan.
In terms of how it looks when it's just sitting out there in the water.
Mhm.
Because when we're going through some shallow areas in our canoe, there's
Yeah.
these great pillowy mats of something. We don't know what they are at this point.
Yeah.
How does this look in comparison to other things that it might be?
I'm going to show you if I can figure out how to do that again. Well, chances are what you're seeing is Nutella, chances are, but that would be a place I would take a sample and just make sure, because it is that tangled mat. If I can, oh, hold on a sec. That is the thing that, oh boy, I think I would figure this out after all this time, right? Hold on. I have so many Starry Stonewort photos. Let's see if I took any from here. I usually do take them off the top of the. Last year I was focusing on trying to get my individual photos better. Oh gosh. Nope. Sorry guys. Oh. All right. So a lot of times, this is a photo that I was using as Starry Stonewort. This nice tidy mats over here, see how all of that is? This is in the channel behind my cottage, okay? This stuff here, talking to Tyler, who's probably the best Ontario expert, sorry, Bob. This is likely Nutella. There is definitely Starry Stonewort mixed in all through here, but the majority of it is likely Nutella. The problem I have is everywhere I put a rake, I pull up the Starry Stonewort bulbils and clear monofilaments. So, you know, although it's mixed in, it's, you know, not all Starry Stonewort. This here, this kind of messy section, Tyler thinks that is much more likely to be Starry Stonewort. It is kind of a tangled, messy pile of stuff. It can look like this, but it's not as tidy. Okay, that's my best description. But if I find a mat that looks like this, of this much Nutella in one space, that's a place I check. And on Stony Lake, I don't know if it's true other places, but on Stony Lake, when I find Nutella, a big section like this, chances are I will also find at least some Starry Stonewort in there. So I check there. Okay, and like you, we're canoeists, and the canoe for me is, the only problem, Alan, with this, I'm going to warn you, and once you start looking in the water all the time for Starry Stonewort in your canoe, you start looking down all the time. You need to not do that. You have to look up and enjoy your paddle. Do not be always looking in the water, because after a while you just become a little weird. Yeah, so don't go there. Okay, you know, glance down. Yeah, I see a lot of Nutella. Is there raggedy sections? Check that. Okay, does that make sense?
Yep, it does.
Okay.
Could I just add one thing? You don't have to become obsessed, but, and I don't want to counter the raking protocol and everything. That's great. But one thing I learned early on, I'm in the business, aquatic biologist, and, you know, I had a design for a sampling program and all that, much like the kind of rake program. Sometimes I forgot to just look at stuff, you know, before I started raking, or when I was out for a paddle or whatever.
Yeah.
If you see something, you can look at it and say, you know, maybe it's starry, or maybe it's something else. But that's what I love about iNaturalist. It's so easy to pop an observation wherever you might be outside of your actual sampling time.
That's right.
It's not going to hurt, and you learn so much. I've learned a lot. I don't work on terrestrial insects at all. I take a photo of one when I see one now, and I get ideas about what it is and its story. So I think if we all have that attitude about the plants and the water, yeah, we might find a couple of sites where we maybe wouldn't have looked for starry.
Right.
But we'll also find other sites where there's other stuff and get a much better idea of what's in our water, which can't hurt.
Yeah, and
that's
I
right.
think to add on to that, if you guys see anything else that's unusual, I think there was a really good point made earlier on. I think it was Patty who said it, The purpose of these types of community science or citizen science, whatever you want to call it, programs, is not just in what you're doing specifically and trying to look for Starry Stonewort, but also trying to act as a force for early detection and rapid response, right? Like in order for the province to rapidly respond to a new detection of whatever species we encounter, it's really fundamental that we catch it early. So if you see something and you're saying, what is that? And you snap that photograph, you're that eyes on the landscape, that could be the first detection. I know it sounds a little bit romantic. It's like, well, what's the chances? But it can.
Not really.
It can and it has happened, right? Many times. So it's really important that you just, if there's the hair standing up on the back of your neck and you're saying to yourself, I should take a photo, take a photo. It's always so much easier to just do that and then learn from it rather than just ignore it. And then in 10 years time, when something's like majorly established and there's no way of getting rid of it,
the first ever observation of zebra mussels in the Great Lakes was a summer student in a boat on Lake St. Clair.
There you go. Yeah.
Found something in the sand. What the heck is this?
Yeah. Well,
there you go.
It happens all the time. Like right now we're working with trying to see whether or not we have a marbled crayfish population. And I won't say where, but it has been reported to us. And we actually saw the very first report in iNaturalist. And as a result of that, the province and we and myself have reacted to that, trying to further do early detection to see if it is there, because if it is, we're going to be working towards eradication. And that's why these efforts are so important, right? It goes beyond than just the looking for Starry Stonewort, which is very important. Yep. But at the same time, there's just, you're achieving so many other things while you're out there, right? As well as just learning for yourselves.
That's right. And learning for ourselves is fun. And that's a good thing to do no matter what's happening.
Okay. And snap photos of snails.
Just try to have, yeah. And if you see a wild pig,
yeah, mystery snails and wild pigs, please.
There you go. And now crayfish. The things I just worry about, I'm just worrying about plants, and this man's walking around with crayfish on his mind and all sorts of things. So, okay. So is there any other questions? Oh, Patty?
Well, just a couple of things to clarify and just a couple of observations, Alan, when I was doing this. The first thing I'd like to say is I think almost every identification that we have done in the last 2 or 3 years ourselves was out of a canoe.
Yeah.
Okay, we did lots of rake toss, but everything that came up was somebody who was aware of it and they were out paddling and they brought it to our attention and we went and checked it out. I noticed when I was checking things out in that back bay originally that Carol mentioned, I think this was maybe the 2nd or 3rd year, the way the sun hits it sometimes, and when you look down, you might see lots of white little things that you think might be stars, but in fact, they were little pieces of zebra mussel. Or it was the way some drop of water was reflecting off. So until you get there, you don't know, but that struck me one year, especially when they told us that the zebra mussels, they like to live together. So that was true. Lots of the biomass I was pulling up at times for checking things out turned out to be zebra mussels, not stars. But I just want to ask one thing to you, Carol, just so you can reinforce it. If there are stars and rhizoids, which I consider to be like fish, fishing line, there is nothing else, extinct or otherwise, that we're aware of that has those stars. Is that correct?
Everything that I find to read says that the star-shaped bulbils is a distinguishing feature of Starry Stonewort. There were not other, I don't believe that there, but the thing is, we have to be careful. Wait. One of the things you have to be careful with is, you could find little bulbils of, misshapen things, and you think, that's a star.
Very clear.
But the actual star,
Right.
I don't think there is.
I tend to start with the easiest thing and work backwards. I wouldn't tell you that the guy was 5'10", had brown hair and glasses if he had like a pointed head that was 6 foot tall. I mean, I would start with the easiest thing, right? As opposed to all of these other distinguishing features, which are important. But to me, unless somebody tells me, and I did learn yesterday that they're now discovering what they thought were extinct forms of Cara, and maybe that's going to be something down the road. But right now, as far as we know, Starry Stonewort's most distinguishing feature would in fact be the star. Would that be correct? Okay.
As far as I know, yes. And I'm not a scientist, so
I
was
know,
just
I know.
clarify
I
if there's
try,
something else.
but
But as far as I know,
start with
no.
the easiest thing
yeah.
and work backwards, right? Okay.
Okay.
So
Well,
thank you
there's
so much. I think you did an excellent job, and I will mute myself again and just listen. So,
Thanks, Patty. Just to clarify, Patty is my neighbor and has been listening and talking with Starry Stonewort stuff to me for a very long time. And we both spend way too much time looking down. So we are now learning to look back up. So I'm going to start identifying birds. So, okay. So I think that's it. I'm just looking. Phil Brace is asking to everyone, may I ask what or where is the best resource to go to find out what exactly is being done with all of the research report studies? I'm seeing photos that were taken in excess 5 years ago. That I can't even tell you. Like on management front, Phil. Phil, I'll give you a call and we can talk, but I don't know. Aside from clean, dry, and drain, is it perhaps more specifically? Yeah. Again, yeah. There's. I don't really want to get into the whole management thing at this point. I don't really. At this point, I'm just interested in observing and reporting. I could talk to you about the other stuff on the side, Phil. So I will do that. I need to call you anyway. I had some other stuff to talk to you about. So, oh, Bob Bailey says he loves the smell of Cara. Well, okay, I'm not the only, clearly not the only weirdo on this call. All right. Okay. So, okay, everyone. If you have any questions at all, don't, wait. Just give me a quick email and I can call you. And oh, there's a new message. What's that? Invasive species, there's a combo of minimized invasive evaluating effects. Okay, I don't know what that means, Bob, if you want to talk.
No, that's okay. Just talking to Phil.
Okay, you can talk to Phil. All right. Okay, all right. Well, I'm going to let you all go and get back to your life. And I will email you probably in a couple of weeks and say, hey, now's the time. Go ahead and give it a start. And I would like to thank Bob for all of his assistance and Brooke, as usual, who's always been helpful and nice, and the rest of you for bothering to sit here all this time and listen on this lovely day. Okay, so take care of yourselves and I'll be in touch soon. Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye for now.